We're in Austin, Texas to speak to the owner of one of the fastest McLarens in town. At over 700 horsepower, this McLaren has been tuned to go around a racetrack in a heartbeat. We're going to be asking him how you can start your path to financial success in today's world. With that being said, let's get this video started. Well, Andy, I know you have a really hectic schedule this month, so I appreciate you squeezing me in. We're here with owner of this beautiful McLaren 570S. And can you tell us a little bit about your car here?
Yeah, I bought it about a year ago. A friend of mine was going to upgrade his car to a Lamborghini STO. And he asked me if I wanted to buy it. And a friend of mine beforehand had contacted me 2 weeks earlier about starting an exotic car rental business. So I jumped on the chance. It was a good price, so I ended up buying it. However, the exotic car rental business hasn't started yet, and that was a year ago, and it's on hold, so I decided to keep the car anyway.
Yeah, congratulations. She's a beauty.
Thanks.
Have you done any modifications to it?
No, I haven't, but the previous owner modified he tuned the engine and got downpipes installed. It has 700 plus horsepower. And it's a really good driving car.
Nice. What's your favorite thing about the car?
I guess the way it handles.
Oh, okay.
It handles really well. I have a Lamborghini also, a Huracan, and it's a nice car also, but I think the McLaren handles a little bit better than the Lamborghini, but reliability-wise, I mean, this car is very reliable. Both cars are very reliable, but I worry less about the Lamborghini than I do the McLaren. But McLaren hasn't given me any problems at all.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Two
supercars under one roof, huh? What do you do for a living?
I retired back in 2016, but I'm still an engineer, a petroleum engineer, and I'm currently working part-time as a consultant with the TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and I review injection well permits for that state agency.
How did you get into that petroleum engineering?
I guess when I was in high school, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot, but I needed to wear glasses, and back then they didn't allow people to wear glasses to be Air Force pilot. I got my pilot's license in '81 while I was in high school, but back then the oil boom was pretty strong, and I liked geology and I liked engineering. So I combined the two and went to UT and got my degree in petroleum engineering. Unfortunately, by the time I graduated, oil was $9 a barrel and nobody was hiring. So I was working part-time for the state at the Texas Railroad Commission, and that's where I started working as a part-time student, and then I ended up getting a full-time job there, and that's where I met my wife, Melinda.
Nice, congratulations on that. Yeah. So you pretty much retired at a young age then, I would say.
Yeah, at 52.
That's super young. The standard retirement age is what, 62, 65? How are you able to retire so early?
One of the things about working for the state is that they offer pensions. And when I first started working for the state, they talked about retirement. Well, that's in a million years. Who cares about retirement? Right. Now that, I've been almost 30 years with the state, I got significant pension, and also my wife's also a state worker, and she also retired the same day I did, and she also has a pension. We still put money away for a 401k and made other investments, assuming we weren't going to have a pension, but the pension definitely comes in handy.
Was it always a goal in mind when you were in middle school and high school? What kind of flipped that light bulb on for you where you said, you know what, I really need to start thinking about my future?
Well, I guess I learned from my parents. They retired in '85. They're both from Mexico, and they were U.S. citizens. They bought their house, the house that I grew up in Dallas, for like $10,000. Wow. They retired in '85. My dad paid it off in 10 years. The mortgage payment was $137 a month, if you don't believe that. Talk about inflation.
Yeah.
And they were able to retire. They rented their house for 20 years while they were in Mexico. They collected approximately $20,000 in rent over a 20-year period. Plus, their $10,000 house was eventually sold for $135,000 back in '06. Partially a lower price because of it needed a lot of renovations, and it had been a rental property for 20 years. So that got me the idea of starting to buy real estate in Austin in '06.
Nice.
So I learned from my parents how to manage money, and then I think I taught my kids the same thing, and they saw what I did, and they're kind of doing the same thing. But I'd like to say that I've always had like a side hustle. Even when I was working for the state, I used to lease airplanes to flight schools, and at one point I had 20 airplanes.
Wow.
And then I bought a flight school in Georgetown literally 2 weeks before 9/11. And after 9/11, the only time the phone rang was when people wanted their money back because they weren't going to take flying lessons. And the economy kind of went downhill with Dell laying off employees for the first time. A lot of my customers were Dell employees. But, when you start a business, you look at the numbers, you analyze it, but you never know what's going to happen. Of course, nobody knew 9/11 was going to happen, but I learned lessons from that, and that's one of the reasons I got into real estate.
Nice. 9/11, that was, more than 20 years ago. That was a pretty catastrophic failure to open a flight school right before that, but you didn't know that was going to happen. How did you bounce back for that, and how are you so successful now?
The way I bounced back is, the business wasn't doing as well. I had equity in the airplanes, and I ended up selling the school to somebody else who wanted to run it. And that's when I decided I wasn't retired, but I had enough years that I could have pulled my pension, but it would have been a smaller pension. So that's when I decided in 2002 to go back to work for the state and finish my career there. So I went back to work for the Railroad Commission, and then I worked another 7 or 8 years, and then I started buying real estate, and I ended up buying 3 rental properties starting in '06 in Austin. And as I paid as little as $100,000 to $150,000, and then I sold them for like $500,000 to $600,000 a piece.
Geez, you did really well on those.
Yeah, well, I did my research. Travis County was appreciating at 8% a year, and I figured that's similar to the stock market. But I figured, and I got 15-year mortgages on all my houses to pay them off quicker, and interest rates were 5 to 6%, and by paying them off quicker, you built a lot of equity right away. So then you were able to take out equity and buy your second property and then your third property. And I think in 2014 is when I realized you can't keep buying real estate because the mortgage was not covering property taxes.
Okay.
And the rent wasn't covering the mortgage and the property taxes. So that's kind of when I slowed down on rental property.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned that your parents were able to instill good work ethic in you, and you're able to kind of do that to your children. Can you elaborate on that? How are you able to, at a young age, maybe starting out when they're just toddlers, how do you kind of drop nuggets into their mind?
At an earlier age, I've always wanted something different than what my parents were willing to give me. I literally started when I was in 5th grade. I had a paper route with a friend of mine down the street. And believe it or not, our profit margin for delivering papers for the Dallas Times-Herald was $1.30 per house per month. We had about 60 houses, so that was like $90 a month. And I split it with my friend, but $90 a month was a lot of money if you're a 6th grader or whatever in that age. And then, when I wanted to get my flying lessons, of course, my parents, they didn't want me to take flying lessons, and they certainly weren't going to pay for it. So I was working at Jack in the Box fast food, and I paid for my flying lessons, and of course, everything was cheaper back then. The plane, a brand new airplane, and a flight instructor was $37 an hour. The plane itself was $25 an hour, and it was a brand new airplane, Cessna 152, and it had, it was a two-seater, but it was brand new. And it just went on from there. I was always had a goal in mind, and I aimed for what I wanted. I never believed that I couldn't get it. I just had to work for it and figure out how to do it.
Nice. So you would agree that just believing in yourself more than anybody else does carries you the furthest?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to set the goal of what you want and then figure out how to do it. Nobody really told me I couldn't do it. I just had to do it myself, and did it that way. And and I think my kid, so I learned from my parents, and then I think my kids picked up some of those clues also. They're in their 20s and they're both homeowners and doing well. So nice. I'm proud of them, both of them.
Nice. What are your thoughts on the importance of college, and whether that's really necessary in today's world?
You don't have to go to college to become wealthy. You could do it on your own if you start the right business and are willing to work at it. But I think some degrees, for example, engineering, are in demand and they pay well. And that kind of motivated me to do what I did, or where to go to college. My son, he also is a petroleum engineer. And, in 2 years, he saved a lot of money, and he also bought his own house already on his own. We didn't have to co-sign or help him with a down payment. And he says he learned everything he knows from me, even though I didn't directly tell him.
Yeah, congratulations to him at doing that at such a young age.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time to, talk to yourself when you were in high school, what would you change? What would you tell your younger self?
One thing, I took advantage of the state's 401k system. It wasn't really that I wanted to save for retirement. I just wanted to cut my income tax, because I thought I was going to make so much money from the flight school that I was going to have to pay a lot of taxes. So we lived frugally, and we were able to save like 50% of our paychecks and put that away for retirement. And that has shot through the roof. I mean, the stock market was 2,000, S&P 500 down to 700, and now it's close to 6,000. So you could just do the math. The sooner you start, the more your money compounds and the faster it grows. And don't get frustrated and say, oh, it's never going to happen to me, or it's too expensive today. Well, yeah, it is expensive, but if you look at how much people could make today versus what I made, I mean, my starting salary for the state when I graduated from college with an engineering degree was $1,100 a month.
Wow.
And, that's nothing. Starting salaries were $36,000, and I was making like $18,000. So I didn't let that, deter me from my goals. It just slowly, as you made more money, I put more away. And being married helps, because it's two people working together for a common goal, and that definitely helps. And you got to have a like-minded partner with your spouse, and if you have the same financial goal. She let me take control, be in charge of the finances. She didn't want anything to do with that, and I was happy to do that, and we never got into arguments about anything, about money or anything.
Nice. It seems like you found your other half in life, which really helps.
Yeah, that definitely helps. The other thing is I didn't have to pay, I didn't have student loan debt in college because college was so cheap back then. But what I did is, starting in '09, I put money away for my kids' education in a 529, and I put about $45,000 away, but that grew to over $100,000. So I was just able to just simply write checks to pay off their tuition and college and my daughter's education, and they had zero student loan debt. They didn't have to borrow a penny, and I didn't sweat it, and I still had some money left over, which is going to go towards my grandkids. So in a way, that helped them out also to get their start. By me paying for their education, they don't have to deal with student loan debt. And that's a bad thing, having a lot of student loan debt and then not being able to find a good paying job is kind of a minus. So, you know, I would think twice about what I would pay to go to college today, and I would just make sure it's a degree that, you know, is a good field, that pays well and is in demand. Otherwise, you know, you're going to have all this debt and not have a well-paying job. It's going to make it more difficult. But there's a lot more opportunities today back than when I was getting out of college.
Good words to live by. Is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to? I'm sure that along your path to success, you've gotten maybe some help here and there. Is there anybody that you want to, you know, say thank you?
Well, I mean, mainly my parents, but they both passed. So my parents and my wife, Melinda, and of course my kids, you know, I really treasure the moments we had together when we were living under one house and traveling and all. But if I can, you know, I think I put them on the right path, so that to me is enough thanks. And just watching other people that were in real estate or made investments, you know, I kind of learned from my parents, so that's where I got all my ideas.
All right, guys, that was amazing to hear the insight that Andy had for us today. His McLaren is beautiful, no doubt, but the stories he told was worth 10 of those. He mentions that the house he grew up in Dallas, Texas, his parents paid $10,000 for it. Generally, you won't find that in today's world due to inflation. However, the principles that he uses to guide him on his path to prosperity remain true to today. He talks about his initial dreams of being an Air Force pilot shot down because the Air Force wouldn't allow people with glasses. Then he mentioned spending years in college to earn a degree in petroleum engineering, only to find out that by the time he graduated, oil was $9 a barrel and no one would hire him. He goes on to mention how he invested big money into a flight school. Just 2 weeks later, one of the biggest terrorist attacks ever on American soil occurred on September 11th. Needless to say, his timing and his circumstances couldn't have been worse. He can't control that, and he understood this. He didn't stop there. He kept going and found his path to his achievements through investing in real estate. Many of you may also fail at your first attempts at success, but it's the tenacity, the resiliency within yourself that's going to be the factor that ultimately drives you to financial freedom. So don't give up. At the end of the day, I want to bring value to you guys and girls. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and click this link to see the next video. See you on the next one.